RDPs have to comply with the legal framework, but complying with the legal framework in itself, just doing that, isn't necessarily something that's going to make something really, really effective. That it needs more than just respect of the letter of the law. It's the logical coherence. And here, I think Article 3 of the legal proposal really encapsulates what we're aiming for in the RDPs. That will the RDP meet the needs of the territory and contribute to its sustainable development? And this is really the whole point of the RDPs, and where the context indicators are really useful in finding out if we're actually meeting those needs. So then we're all familiar with Article 9 and running through the list of the components of the RDPs. And really the context indicators underpin an awful lot of these. We can't do a good SWOT without having statistics and factual information about the area. In order to define targets, we need to know about the overall setting so we can see whether targets are realistic. Regional, sub-regional needs, so it isn't only regional programs that may need regional data. National RDPs, where there are significant differences between regions, will also find that data useful and important if they need to have different activities or different targeting on different areas. And where there are thematic sub-programs, they need to go through the same process and have a SWOT and a needs assessment and an intervention logic. In terms of the specific elements of the monitoring and evaluation chapter, then we have two particular articles that relate to context indicators here. So one of the whole purposes of the monitoring and evaluation system is to contribute to better targeted support. And we can only do that if we know about the area. And then, of course, we have a list of common indicators where relating to the initial situation is picking up the context indicators. And then, of course, we have the financial execution results, outputs and impacts as well. But it's really to describe the initial situation that we are looking at the context indicators. So that legal compliance brings us back again to the logical compliance and this importance of Article 3, that the whole point is to promote sustainable rural development, and therefore to see whether the RDP is designed to meet the needs of the territory. So in practice then, what are we looking at? We need to have a comprehensive picture of the territory. And if the territory is not a national territory, if it's a NUTS 1 or a NUTS 2 level, then we need to have a comprehensive picture there. We need the most up-to-date picture. Now, you'll be hearing from us now about the information that we have and that we will be providing to you. By the time we have it and can reflect it back, it's gone through a certain number of hoops. And it may well be that at national or regional level you have more recent data. So we absolutely encourage you to use more recent data if you have something that's more up to date than we do. It's looking at the particular specificities of the territory. It helps us to answer questions like, is the RDP appropriate? Are the proposed actions the ones that are really needed? Are we taking the right approach to addressing needs? Is the balance of priorities and resources right? And are proposals realistic? And so it's important that we do as well as we can in finding data and having context indicator data that can describe the territory so that we can answer those questions. Now, we've worked a lot on the list of common indicators, and I know a lot of you here were also in Lisbon, and then we've come back to this in the Exco. We have really reduced the list of proposed common indicators compared to the current period from 59 to 31. But the corollary of this is that program-specific context indicators will be needed. to complete the territory description, to deal with specificities. There are some areas for which we know we don't have common data. A couple of points specifically there are to do with local marketing, short selling circuits, and also to do with skill levels and training levels. We don't have particularly good common data sets, so from specific indicators will be very important there. They also provide the opportunity, and this may be particularly important for regional RDPs, to use locally available data, which maybe isn't available either at national level or certainly not at EU level. Examples perhaps of program-specific indicators, one program-specific indicator that may be useful to a number of you is high nature value forestry, which in the current period is one of the common context indicators, and we're no longer proposing that as one of the common indicators, but we know that for a number of member states and regions, forestry is very important. And in fact, there is a document available here for those of you who are interested, which the Italian network has produced on their approach to high nature value forestry assessment, and I think that could be very useful for member states and regions where forestry is important. The key point really is that everything, all the activities, the intervention logic in the RDP and all the activities proposed have to be justified. But there needs to be a factual underpinning to show that those activities that are included are really going to contribute to sustainable rural development. So to sum up, really the context indicators, yeah, they're a list, it's a set of data that will appear in the implementing acts and that you're required to use, but they are a live thing that runs through the RDP, and it's crucial to making the RDP something that is really going to usefully contribute. And we know that in order to achieve both the legal compliance and the logical coherence, we need appropriate data, and that means the right level, the right timing. So this brings us nicely to today's subject. On my very last slide, before I hand over to Christophe, is just a little bit of how we've got to where we are and what we'll go on to next. So we had the draft context indicator list, which came out of the Lisbon workshop. It was in the December evaluation committee. We've done some further screening on that, and that was then reflected in the background document that was circulated with the agenda for this meeting. We've worked to identify which indicators where we at EU level are not able to provide regional data, and Paloma is going to go into more detail on that. We received comments following the December EXCO from a number of member states on the context indicators. Thank you very much to everyone who sent those, and we're incorporating those into our revision as well. One thing that I haven't mentioned on here, but Christophe is going to come and talk about, is that there's a template of a proposed structure for presenting the context indicator data, which was presented to the February Rural Development Committee, and this also feeds into this, and we will be revising that and presenting the actual data extractions. We are well on the way to having extracted and compiled all the data that we have at the level of the next generation of RDPs. And we'll have a revised document with the list and the definitions in it. And we aim to present all of these to the evaluation committee on March 20th, incorporating very much the results of this workshop, which we hope is going to identify some useful approaches for those indicators with data gaps. So that's the end of my quick introduction, and now I'm going to hand over to Christophe.